Hey everyone, Ryan from Ebike Escape, and in this video I'm sharing a portion of my interview with Daryl Slater, who is the brand manager of Kryptonite locks and lights. And in our interview, we talk about a wide variety of topics that will be split up into different videos, everything from how to lock your electric bike up to the pros and cons of each type of lock. So I hope you find this section of the interview helpful. If you want to support what I'm doing here at Ebike Escape, I'll have a link to Kryptonite bike locks. I will also have a link to our top e-bike brands page and of course our electric bike accessories list. I also have a page dedicated to electric bike deals. Purchases made through those pages help support the channel. So thanks in advance. With that, let's get on with the interview. All right, hey everyone, Ryan from Ebike Escape, and we're back with another interview video, and I'm really excited for this one. It's a little bit different than what we've done before, and I'll let him introduce himself, but today I have Daryl from Kryptonite. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your role at Kryptonite?
Hey everybody, pleasure to be here. Ryan, thank you for hosting. Excited to talk about how we can keep people safe with their e-bikes. My name is Daryl Slater. I am the brand manager and public relations manager for Kryptonite bike locks and lights, based here just outside of Boston, Massachusetts. I have been with Kryptonite for about 12 years in total, and I have been in various roles with Kryptonite under marketing, customer experience, helping support our customers and our dealers, and now in a brand management role, helping drive our global brand strategy for both locks and lights. And I work with our teams in the US as well as in Europe.
All right, great. Thanks, Daryl. So just to preface this conversation, we're going to talk about a number of different topics as it relates to bike locks and in particular e-bike locks. And so we're going to start with some of the pros and cons of each type of lock. And of course, Kryptonite offers a wide variety. You can check them out on their website. But Daryl, if you want to start and talk a little bit about each type of lock and what people might want to think about as it relates to pros and cons of each.
Sure. Yeah. So what I'll probably do, Ryan, is tie in kind of the larger question about the type of security rating a customer and an e-bike rider should consider, because that directly ties into how I'll go through the different lock categories. So first off, from a Kryptonite perspective, we always recommend high security or greater when you're purchasing or riding an e-bike. So for us, on our security rating system, that's 7 or higher, 7 out of 10 or higher. So we have a 1 to 10 security rating system. And basically anything 1 to 4 is really just a deterrent, like a cable, which I'll speak to. And then when you get into 5 and 6, that's moderate security, which for us is really for like suburban riding, locking up at a Starbucks, something of that nature. And then when you get into high security, 7 or greater, this is really where we start talking about locking up in maximum or needing maximum security for high risk areas, locking up in cities, high traffic areas, and this whole category of e-bikes. It's tough for us to ever recommend using a low security product when your average price point for a lot of e-bikes is anywhere between $1,500 and $2,500. I know we're seeing more e-bikes retailing at that $1,000 price point, but really the price and the value of an e-bike dictates the fact that we would say you want to be considering high security or greater. And we do a how to choose chart, which is on our website, something that we make sure we bring to all of our consumer events. This is something you get in a bike shop, and it's very easy to use how to choose chart, and you have an x-axis and a y-axis, and we just basically recommend different types of locks based on where you're locking and for how long you're locking. So location and duration. And so again, if you are locking up an e-bike on a university campus, you're in downtown Chicago, there's going to be a different security that we recommend and suggest versus being out in a rural area. So with that, to kind of set the scene and give some context, I'll jump into cables because I'll spend the least amount of time with cables. Ryan, I know you would never use a cable on your rad wagon. That would be silly, but I will address it because it's important, because we still have a lot of markets and cities in the US where people insist on using cables, even for very expensive bikes. So they provide low security, but they can be used as a secondary lock, or they can be used to secure your front wheel. They can be used for accessories like a helmet or a bag. Pros to these would be that they're flexible, lightweight, easy to carry. But obviously, and we know, and you know from educating your audience, that it's not enough security, right? They're easily defeated, and it wouldn't make sense when you invest, $1,000 plus up to $5,000 on an e-bike to be using a cable as your primary security. But they're not bad to have as a secondary device. And sometimes when you're literally sitting, having coffee, and your bike is right next to you or within 10 feet, we always say, as long as it's an eye shot, then you could use a cable. Now, the idea of flexibility, right? Flexibility and having a lock that allows you to utilize it in multiple lockup situations is where the popularity of a chain has come in. So chains combine what we say the best of both worlds, the hardened steel like a U-lock and the flexibility of a cable. So this is where we've seen globally the chain category really grow. And there's different types of chains, which I'll show. We have chains that have a separate padlock or disc lock, so it's 2 pieces. And then we now have integrated chains where it's an integrated lock head, all one piece, generally lighter weight. Chains can be moderate, high, or ultimate security. And really the pros, as I said, are the flexibility. You can get various length chains. So depending on what style of e-bike you're riding, if you just bought a commuter e-bike and you just need 90 centimeters, kind of more of a standard 3-foot length, or you have a front loader cargo bike and you need a 5 or greater foot chain, we have different lengths. And obviously with the lengths, you start to look at one of the potential challenges. I won't call it a con, I'll call it a challenge. And that's the weight. You really have to know what size chain you want. But what we find is a lot of our customers, and whether we're talking to a brand like, Yuba or Extra Cycle or any of those, when we talk about having baskets on a cargo bike, the chain's not a concern because you have a place where you can put that chain. And one thing about chains, so it can be, the weight can be a challenge. Where do you put it on the bike can be a challenge. But there's certainly some of the cargo style e-bikes that are making this very easy for a security solution. But one of the things I tell consumers a lot when they ask about a chain and they see a big beefy chain, they say, where would I ever use that? And I say to them, do you work in a city and you're in your office for 8 hours, or do you ever go on vacation? Well, yes, of course I go on vacation. So when you're out of the country, let's say for a week and you're on vacation, those e-bikes, let's say there's, 1 or 2 e-bikes, $5,000 of investment in your apartment, in your garage, making sure that you are locking those to a fixed object in your garage is where some of the heavier chains can come into play and can really give you good, what we would call home security, utilizing a ground anchor. So that's become more of a need. And so it really gets into, I try to really educate folks that are newer to security and newer to the bike industry to think of it in terms of situations, because it's situational security. Are we talking about on the go commuting? Are we talking about a weekend ride? Are we talking about security for home? Or are we talking about, just quick stop security at like the grocery store or the coffee store or the coffee shop? So, and that's where there's different, different needs. So on the chains, again, making sure there's a way to transport it and understanding the weight you want, how big or how long you want for a chain. I'll pause there. Ryan, any questions about the cables or chains so far?
No, I would just say comments. I mean, it pretty much echoes my perspective. I've been using some of the Kryptonite chains, particularly in our garage. So I've been using the Evolution series. I have that as well as the NYC Forget About It, I think it's called. So like you said, great for locking up at home. And of course, if we're ever going somewhere where we're not going to be around, we will definitely bring our chain lock. And I'm sure you're going to get into this, but when we're going, I really like the folding locks that can mount directly to the bike. So I'll let you keep going, but that's my comments so far.
Absolutely. Yep. It's almost like having a toolkit. And there's more than one lock needed for different situations. So I'll go through U-locks and then folding locks, and we'll conclude with ring locks and plugins. So on the U-lock side, still a great option for any type of e-bike. As far as the pros, so what I like about U-locks is that it allows for a tight lockup. One of the things we always advocate from a proper lockup perspective is eliminate as much space as you can in the lockup area so that a thief doesn't walk by a rack of bikes and see an opening where they can get a tool in. That may not mean they're going to defeat the lock, but they're probably going to do damage to your frame and ruin your day. And we don't want to have folks have their day ruined and have to go get the bike fixed. As far as, and I also think from a U-Lock perspective, of all the security categories, they do a good job of providing a good balance from security and weight, a good ratio of the security offered and the weight in terms of transport. Now, challenges with a U-Lock for sure. One of the biggest topics of things we're doing some innovative work on is transporting on the bike. You look at the rad wagon, you look at some of the work and research you've done. That space in the triangle, it certainly can be challenging with an e-bike, whether you're talking about a rack style, a down tube style battery or an integrated battery. You still have challenges in terms of where you're going to mount that U-Lock. So that's one of the things that we're continuously looking at and working on. And when you think about the cargo bikes, that's where it probably becomes the most challenging in terms of finding space. It's such a utilitarian focused bike. Finding that space on the frame can be a challenge. So this is where I think the growth in folding locks, as you alluded to, it's really become more and more popular with the influence. We sell a lot of products in, whether we're in Germany, Scandinavia, the French market. I've certainly seen the demand for folding locks. And so pros right off the bat: compact, easy to transport, flexible in terms of your options of where you could transport it. And it makes a lot of sense, particularly for a commuter and someone riding an e-bike right off the bat. And that's something that we've devoted a lot of time to in our own portfolio over the last few years. Now, from a cons or a challenges perspective, I would say if you're talking about a $2,500 or a $5,000 e-bike, from a recommendation to a consumer perspective, it's not the highest level of security, right? And we have to be clear with folks. And I never want to oversell security. I want folks to understand our options, our security ratings, and where we recommend things. So I think with an e-bike, it's good for in certain areas, like a high risk area, a major city. It's good for a quick stop or an hour stop. When you get into more suburban or rural areas, you can lock for a longer period of time because you do have a hardened steel product that has steel bars in the folding lock. But what I also think it does, which is not a bad thing, is it now allows you to look at needing layers of security or creating a security system, which I think is the way in which e-bike manufacturers and a lot of e-bike customers start to think in terms of systems, right? Because we have our communication system on board. The e-bike itself is its own system. And so thinking about having a folding lock, potentially having another security device to lock the front wheel, like a spare cable. And then you even get into, I'll segue into ring locks, that for a lot of e-bikes are coming already OEM from the manufacturer on the rear wheel. So you start to think of a world where you have a ring lock. When you need certain situations, in addition to that folding lock, you also could have a plug-in chain, right? The plug-in chain plugs right into the ring lock. So you're now locking to a fixed object. You have your folding lock to secure the frame and the front wheel. You now start to look at having more of a true system. And anywhere where you have multiple security products, oftentimes that means different tools for a thief, which means more time, and they're likely to pick a different target. Now, I know most customers, most e-bike riders don't want to be carrying multiple products, but there may be those situations once or twice a month where you're going to a meeting across town, you're meeting up with friends, and you're in an area where you're like, oh, I need a little bit more security. That's where having that additional product or products, in addition to a folding lock or in addition to a ring lock with plug-in, makes sense to create a true e-bike system.
Yeah, and I would agree with those statements, and I should be clear too. It's as you mentioned, it relates to where you live. So we live in central Wisconsin. We are not in a high theft area, which is why I feel 100% comfortable, using some of those folding locks, because I'm not so much worried. We always bring our battery in with us because that's kind of an easy point to target, because some of those can be keyed pretty easily. So yeah, and having it mount to the bottle cage is big for us. So that makes it easy to clip on there, and you always have it with you. You don't even need to think about it. So yeah, and I will say too, with the cargo bikes, as you said, the problem with the cargo bikes is because they often have these very wide kickstands. They're kind of on dual kickstands. So yeah. I feel like that's kind of what you were mentioning as far as why it's sometimes hard to get, a U-lock in there, because you're just going to be so much further away from what you're locking to, which is why you might want to consider something else. I hope you found this portion of the interview with Daryl helpful. In the next installment, he's going to talk further about the offerings from Kryptonite and actually give you a closer look at the various types of bike locks that they have. So stay tuned for that and subscribe if you want to be notified when that video is posted. Much more coming soon with this interview. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.